I talk about how I made a native app in Windows and Mac using in 2 weeks using Maui. And the title might be a little misguiding because we had already web applications and console applications, but it answers the question of, can you run this in production? Can you run Blazor in production? We have been running Blazor in production for a while, and now we are running Maui in production, and it has been great. So the first of all, who am I? If you are more in the Maui and Blazor live, you might know me more as Coding Flamingo. This is actually the first time that I mentioned in a public event or something that I'm actually Coding Flamingo. I usually try to keep my two lives separate, but I was a Blazor early adopter since it was in preview. At that point, I was actually working at Microsoft, and I was doing some identity and PKI stuff, and then I left and co-founded Ketos. And here are my two Twitters. So there's my personal one that is a little more professional. Then there's my Coding Flamingo one that is a lot of memes and my videos and stuff like that. So first of all, I want to talk about why Maui plus Blazor. There's a lot of talk about Maui and how great it is and how it's the evolution of Xamarin, and you can do multi-platform and what in computers and phones. But the most important thing for me is Blazor, because most applications now are web applications. You start with your web application and then you have to migrate it. Maybe you start needing access to certain stuff. So, for example, we're a security and cryptography company, so we needed access to the SSH agent of the OS to be able to like add SSH certificates to it. And that's something you cannot do from the browser, and you shouldn't be able to do it from the browser. You should have the browser kind of secure. So then we we evolved into needing a native application, and being able to reuse our Blazor components made the application building way easier. You can just kind of grab whatever already existed and use it. So that was kind of great, and that's why I feel like, yes, .NET MAUI using native components is great, but being able to reuse your web application is even better. And one of the main things that is great about Maui is you don't have to choose. You're not married to Blazor, or you're not married to Maui. You can use either or. You can mix and match if you want to use a Blazor component somewhere and then you want to use a native component to pop up an alert or something that your user would be used to. You can do both. So that's why I feel that Maui is great, and we love using it, and it allows you to kind of merge a little more back end and front end. You know, the back end people can start doing a little bit of logic in the front end. You'll see that I still can't do any actual CSS or anything. So like the demo today, it's going to be really ugly, but it shows the functionality. So here's the opportunity we had. So we had our web application. It had kind of like the easy way to show your endpoints and do everything. And we had our console application, which was loved by developers because developers sometimes like writing scripts and doing everything in console. But there was this kind of gap in the middle of people that wanted to use our console application, but were a little bit not as comfortable or wanted to have easy to click UI. For example, I use the UI version to connect to my lab at home and everything. That is just like one or two computers, so it's way better. And we merged them together and we created the UI version. And we're a small company, so like resources are very precious, and it only took me 2 weeks to do because thankfully I could grab the components that the front end team had already done, use the logic that we had already used, and merge them into one application. So here are the steps we took. So we actually had to extract the Razor components into a Razor library. That's a typo there. We created the Maui application. We referenced our Blazor library. We referenced our library used in the console application, and we merged them into one application. We did already kind of, when we were planning our products, we knew Maui was coming out. So we did kind of plan a little bit of extract more the data, the logic, and that made it a little easier. But even if you don't plan it, like it's a lot of, you might have to move around a little bit of the data, a little bit of copy pasting, but it's very doable. So now we're going to do a live demo. I'm going to write all the code live. So hopefully it works. So let me just minimize this. And we're going to start with our Blazor application. So in this repo, and this is all in my Coding Flamingo repo, I'll send the link later in the chat, and I'll post it on my Twitter. But in here we have the projects. So we have Clipping Maui, which is just like a Maui application that I already created. We have our existing Blazor site, and we have our sample console application. And in here it's already extracted into the libraries. So, and we're just gonna create it. So first we have our Blazor site, nothing too special. And actually I didn't even have to run it. I have it open here because I have it running in Azure, since we're gonna have to pull from that API. But basically it's a magical site. You press a quote and you get a new quote every time. And there's only like 5 quotes, and that's it. I couldn't come up with something better. So we have that. And then we have our sample console application. This sample console application, I'm going to open the code a little bit, and it's very simple. It creates an HTTP client service that basically has retry options and stuff like that. It calls the get method, and we have the home site set as a variable, and we output the result and we save it to a file. Obviously, this is not very useful, but I just wanted to see like that you can use like file service, and this could be something way more important. I mean, here we're just saving to a file to show that you can save it to a file easier than in a browser, but obviously if you're doing a full application, it probably is something else. You want to use GPS or you want to use something else. So that's kind of it, and you run it, and that's it. And if we go to our Git, I'm just going to open the file here. So if we go to Clippy Maui and we go to sample console, we go to bin debug, and you'll see that it saved the text into this notepad. So we have kind of those two. And then last but not least, we have our Maui application that I said to build instead of set a startup. So we'll have, oh, wow. Let's set a startup and hopefully it will run. All right, it still runs. I was afraid there for a second. So this is just a Maui application that I'm using for some of the video series I'm doing for creating a Maui app, publishing and doing all that stuff. And it just grabs whatever you type and makes Clippy say it. And now I want to kind of do it in the fetch data. We're going to change that to also get quotes from our server. So to do that, the first thing we have to do is we're going to add project references. So we need the client library and the sample razor library. And then in here, I'm just going to open holding the counter. So we're just going to delete the counter stuff. And I'm going to go to the Blazor site. Sorry, this here, I think I did it in index. So as you can see, what I did is we just have the heading and then this component, and this component is in our sample library. So all we have to do is grab this. Grab this component, and we're gonna in our counter site. As you can see, we pass some stuff. So we have to have a function to get a new quote, and we have to have a text to do that. And so I'm just gonna add. I like separating my C# files from the other ones, so I'm just gonna do counter.razor.cs. The reason for doing that is if you name them exactly the same, it'll be kind of like underneath each other here. And in here, same, we can just go back and copy some of the code. Oh, sorry, this is the wrong one. I'm just going to open the index here to just have it. Huh. I'm doing this in the wrong project. Sorry about that. I'm doing this in the counter. Wait, no. Oh, I added this in the wrong project. Sorry. As I said, doing it live. What could go wrong? So we're going to add a new class. All right, and now we are going to go here. And we'll have to inject something to have the client. And we're going to need the string. Here we have it. We copied the string name. And we copied the get string from server. So now if we look at our, it shouldn't be really, why is this not liking it? Oh, we're missing the using as well. So we have to add the using. And if you're going to use it all over your product, all over your project, you can just put it in the imports. So it's cleaner. So you can remove this. We're going to hope that eventually it'll all come together because there's some errors there. So, okay, now we have kind of like now we have to do the logic side of it. So first we have our client library. And let's look what we have here. So we have our file service that is just a static class. And then we have our HTTP client service. That's the one that I mentioned. It uses an HTTP client. And it's basically just a wrapper around it that uses Poly to do retries if there's like a timeout or a bad gateway or something like that, that it usually just makes it a little more available. So we're going to have to go to the Maui program, and we're going to have to add it. We're going to need an HTTP client. And HTTP client service. And this is just so we can inject it. Now we can go back to the counter. We're going to do inject. Let's reopen it, see if it helps. So Visual Studio is not showing me my autocompletes to kind of show this. But basically what we have to do is we're missing some stuff here. All right, we'll see if it comes up. Actually, I'm just going to close it and open it again. All right, it's not liking this. And so I'm just going to cheat. And I do have one that I already cheated a little bit. Wait, what? Okay, and it's in the fetch data one. So we're just going to delete this. As I said, I'll try to do it live, but if the demo gods are not with me, I'm just going to use the fetch data. So here you see I just kind of did it. I actually did it in the same page. And you can see we have here the Blazor component from our library. We have the get message callback. So every time this button is pressed, it'll actually call back to the main one since we want the logic to be external to the component. And then the message to display, we're going to pass it. So in here, the get message, it will go call generic, call our home site, and do this. And if we want to use a file service, we can do write to file and do sample. We sam.txt, and then the content. If we see this one, it's just a very simple to definition, and we're just writing to a file that on the path that we pass, and that's kind of it. So now if we run this, it should do kind of the same as the website does, but it'll save it to a file without the user having to, you can save it. One of the main differences is it doesn't go automatically to file to downloads. It goes to whatever file you specify since you have access to the whole computer. So it's going to save it in the same folder as where the Maui app is running. So now if we run this again, and we go to fetch data, you see it's here. Oh, and I'm getting an exception. Oh, okay. So I'm passing to an actual path that system 32, that it's not allowed since it's running from system 32. So let's change that. So in here, I'm just going to grab my Git path. It's going to be users Igal.git. And we're going to pass that in Maui. And these are kind of like the little things that you might have to change for your Maui to work. That's why it still took a little bit of time. But and obviously, usually you would do actual references, but in here, since it's a demo, I'm just gonna do just do it like this. And it's gonna try to save the message. So we're gonna go to get quote, and it's gonna be there. And we can see that it saved the file here. So the great thing about this is any CSS, so the .NET-MAUI Blazor actually works kind of as a regular Blazor application. As you can see, the template is actually the same. They use the same one that they do for the browser. So if you already have your server running, you have everything, and as the last presentation showed, you even have authentication. You just have to add your authentication here. You can contact the same web APIs. You can use the same CSS. So as you can see here, it doesn't look great. But if I had the same CSS as my website does, then I can just copy paste, and someone that doesn't usually do front end could get this application working and running in a few days and weeks. And Gerald and I have actually done great work in both of our YouTube channels on kind of showing how to deploy these applications, put them in the app stores, and have it up ready to go, be code signed. So that's how you can have your website. This was a very simplified example, but this is how you could have your website up in .NET MAUI in a few minutes. And as you can see here, this is an actual application. So if I close it and I have it pinged, like I can just open it here. And since I have a little bit of extra time, I'm actually going to talk a little bit about it because a lot of people will be like, well, there's progressive web applications that if you go to like, um, I know YouTube Music has one. So I'm just going to open it up here real quick. And you can save it into your, all right, it's not showing, but basically you can save it and have it as an application, but that's still running, and you can do that with Blazor. That's still running on the browser sandbox. So if you need any access to actual native stuff, that's when Maui comes in, and that's when this kind of partnerships comes in, and it's the greatest way to move your application into native. And as you saw in other presentations, like you can have native stuff come up. You could have the regular Windows alert come up for something, and you can have different permissions for the application and so on. So this is why I think Blazor plus Maui are great. Now let's go back to the presentation and the conclusion and see if you have any questions. So conclusion, Maui's awesome. If you're watching this, you probably already know it, or you are thinking about using it. Give it a try. The community is great. So usually when you have a problem, and actually shout out to Gerald, he is always there. He's always answering questions, and many other Microsoft people are there as well as other community people. This is an early product, and that's I also put it here. Maui's still young, so there is still a little errors that you might have, and some issues that are still being worked out, but the community is working really hard at getting it and having great support. So give it a try. You will love it, and you will learn another skill that hopefully in a few years people will be looking for Maui developers all over the place. So now if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.